Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the twisted metal corridors of the ancient starship. The emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the air recycling system wheezed like a dying animal. 3 months ago, his mining crew had discovered this massive vessel buried beneath 2 kilometers of ice on the frozen moon of Kepler 442c. What they thought would be a simple salvage operation had turned into the archaeological discovery of the century. The ship was enormous, easily 5 kilometers long, and built with technology that made human engineering look like stone tools. Every surface was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift when Marcus wasn't looking directly at them. The metal itself was unlike anything in the periodic table, conducting electricity in impossible ways and maintaining structural integrity despite being buried for what the scientists estimated to be over 10,000 years. Marcus squeezed through a partially collapsed doorway, his mining suit's headlamp cutting through the darkness ahead. The company had sent in teams of scientists and engineers, but most of them stayed in the forward sections where the ship's systems were more intact. Marcus preferred the deeper areas, the places where strange sounds echoed through the corridors and the walls hummed with residual energy. His scanner beeped insistently, indicating a large open space ahead. Marcus had been following this particular corridor for 6 hours, mapping it centimeter by centimeter. The company paid well for detailed scans of the ship's interior, and Marcus needed the money. His daughter Sarah was starting university next year, and mining work didn't exactly come with a college fund. As he rounded the final corner, Marcus gasped. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, easily the size of a football stadium. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, supported by massive pillars covered in the same shifting patterns he'd seen throughout the ship. But what caught his attention was the center of the room. A crystalline structure rose from the floor like a frozen waterfall, its surface pulsing with soft blue light. Inside the crystal, barely visible through the translucent material, was a figure. Marcus approached cautiously, his scanner going crazy with readings he couldn't interpret. The figure was humanoid, but clearly not human. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with elongated limbs and features that were both beautiful and alien. Its skin had a silvery quality, and what Marcus initially thought was clothing appeared to be some kind of organic armor that had fused with its body. Most striking were its hands, which ended in long, delicate fingers that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Marcus circled the crystal prison, taking detailed scans and photographs. The being's eyes were closed, and for a moment Marcus wondered if it was dead. Then he noticed the subtle rise and fall of its chest. Whatever this creature was, it was alive, somehow preserved in this crystal for thousands of years. His radio crackled to life. "Marcus, this is base camp. We're reading some unusual energy signatures from your location. Everything okay down there?" Marcus hesitated before responding. Something told him that this discovery was too important to share over an open channel. The company had made it clear that any significant finds would be turned over to the Earth Colonial Authority, and Marcus had seen how bureaucrats handled archaeological discoveries. They'd study this being for decades, never bothering to try to wake it up or communicate with it. "Just some residual power fluctuations," Marcus replied. "Nothing to worry about. I'm going to continue mapping this section." "Copy that. Base camp out." Marcus approached the crystal structure again, running his gloved hand over its surface. It was warm to the touch, and he could feel a gentle vibration running through it. As he examined the base of the structure, he noticed a series of indentations that looked almost like handprints. They were smaller than the being's hands, about the size of human hands. Acting on instinct, Marcus removed his gloves and placed his palms against the indentations. The moment his skin made contact, the crystal flared with brilliant light. Marcus jerked his hands back, but the process had already begun. cracks appeared in the crystal, spreading upward like lightning across its surface. The being's eyes snapped open, revealing irises that swirled with the same blue light as the crystal. Marcus stumbled backward as the crystal structure began to crumble, falling away in chunks that dissolved before they hit the ground. In moments, the being was free, standing in the center of the chamber and looking directly at Marcus. For a long moment, neither moved. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he stared into those alien eyes. The being was even more impressive outside the crystal, its presence filling the vast chamber with an almost palpable energy. Then, to Marcus's amazement, the being spoke. "Thank you." The words came not through sound, but directly into Marcus's mind, carrying with them emotions of gratitude, relief, and something else he couldn't identify. "I am Zaranel of the Etherean Healing Caste. You have freed me from a sleep that should have lasted until the stars grew cold." Marcus found his voice. "I'm Marcus Chen. I'm human. We're exploring your ship." Zaranel tilted her head, studying him with those swirling eyes. "Human. Yes, I can see the life force flowing through you. Your species is young, barely begun, yet you possess something remarkable. Your neural patterns, they resonate with the healing frequencies." "Healing frequencies?" Zaranel raised one of her glowing hands, and Marcus felt a warm sensation wash over him. Every ache and pain from hours of crawling through the ship's corridors disappeared. A small cut on his arm from earlier in the day closed and healed completely. More surprisingly, he felt energized in a way he hadn't experienced since his 20s. "My people were healers," Zaranel explained, her mental voice tinged with sadness. "We traveled the galaxy, offering our services to any species that needed them. This ship, the Sanctuary of Renewal, was a hospital ship. We carried the sick and injured from hundreds of worlds, healing them with the power that flows through all living things." Marcus looked around the vast chamber with new understanding. Now he could see that what he'd thought were decorative patterns were actually medical equipment, just so advanced that he hadn't recognized them. "What happened? Why were you in that crystal?" Zaranel's expression darkened. "We were betrayed. A species we had helped, the Korthak Empire, decided they wanted our healing abilities for themselves. They couldn't understand that our power comes from connection to life, not from technology that could be stolen. When they attacked, I sealed myself in the preservation matrix to protect the secret of our healing arts." "The secret?" "The healing power is not unique to my species. It exists in all living beings, waiting to be awakened. But it requires a pure heart and a willingness to sacrifice for others. The Korthak could never access it because they sought power only for themselves." Marcus's scanner beeped again, and he realized that the energy signatures were growing stronger. Throughout the ship, systems that had been dormant for millennia were beginning to activate. Emergency lighting flickered on in corridors that had been dark for thousands of years. "Your ship is waking up," Marcus observed. Zaranel nodded. "The sanctuary responds to the presence of a healer. It has been waiting for someone worthy to awaken it." She looked at Marcus intently. "You have the potential, human. I can sense it in you. The same compassion that drove you to free a stranger, the same courage that brought you to explore the unknown depths of this ship. I'm not a healer. I'm just a miner. And yet you freed me when you could have called for your superiors. You acted with your heart, not your head. That is the first requirement of a true healer." The radio crackled again, more urgently this time. "Marcus, we're reading massive power spikes throughout the ship. Whatever you did down there, it's causing system-wide activation. We need you to return to base camp immediately." Marcus looked at Zaranel, who had gone very still. "They're coming," she said, her mental voice urgent. "I can sense their approach. Your people, they have good intentions, but they will want to study me, to dissect the ship's systems, to understand our technology. I won't let that happen. You may not have a choice, but there is another way. Zaranel moved closer to Marcus, her glowing hands extending toward him. I can share my knowledge with you, pass on the healing arts before they arrive, but the process will change you forever. You will become something more than human, but also something that may never be able to return to your old life. Marcus thought of his daughter Sarah, of the quiet life he'd planned after earning enough money from this salvage operation. Then he thought of all the people who could be helped with the power Zaranel was offering, all the suffering that could be prevented. What do I need to do? Zaranel smiled, the first truly warm expression he'd seen from her. Place your hands on mine and open your mind. But be warned, the Korthaks still exist in the galaxy. If they discover that the healing arts have been passed to a human, they will stop at nothing to capture you. They've spent 10,000 years searching for a way to steal our abilities. Marcus could hear footsteps echoing through the corridors now, his fellow miners and the scientific team making their way toward the chamber. He had seconds to decide. He looked into Zaranel's swirling eyes and saw not just an alien being, but a kindred spirit who had dedicated her life to helping others. He placed his hands on hers. The moment their skin touched, Marcus's world exploded into sensation. Knowledge flowed through him like a river, information about anatomy, physiology, the fundamental forces that held living beings together. He learned about species from across the galaxy, their unique biological structures, their common vulnerabilities and strengths. But more than knowledge, he felt the connections. Every living thing in the galaxy was linked by invisible threads of energy, and those with the healing gift could see and manipulate those connections. He could sense the life forces of his approaching colleagues, the subtle patterns of their health and vitality. The transfer lasted only moments, but when it ended, Marcus was no longer quite the same person who had entered the chamber hours earlier. His hands now glowed with the same soft light as Zaranel's, and he could feel the pulse of life energy flowing through everything around him. The first lesson is complete, Zaranel said, her mental voice now carrying a note of satisfaction. But your people are almost here, and I must return to my preservation matrix. They cannot know what has transpired here. Wait, Marcus said, but Zaranel was already moving back to the center of the chamber. Crystal began forming around her again, but this time Marcus understood what he was seeing. It wasn't a prison, but a protective cocoon that would keep her safe while she waited for the right time to emerge. When the time comes, you will know how to find me again, her voice whispered in his mind as the crystal sealed around her. But until then, practice in secret. Learn to control the gift, and beware of those who would use it for evil. The chamber fell silent just as the first of Marcus's colleagues appeared at the entrance. Dr. Sarah Kim, the expedition's xenobiologist, stood in the doorway with her mouth hanging open. Marcus, she breathed. What is this place? And what is that structure in the center? Marcus looked at the crystal formation, now appearing dormant again. Zaranel was gone, hidden away where no one would think to look for a living being. To the scientists, it would just be another alien artifact to study. I think it's some kind of central processing core, Marcus said, surprised at how easily the lie came to him. The whole ship seems to be powered from here. When I activated my scanner too close to it, all the systems started coming online. Dr. Kim moved into the chamber, her own instruments already scanning everything in sight. Behind her came the rest of the team, engineers and scientists, all chattering excitedly about the discovery. Marcus stepped back, letting them take over the investigation. His hands were no longer glowing, but he could still feel the power thrumming beneath his skin. As the team worked, he noticed things he'd never seen before. The subtle signs of Dr. Kim's chronic back pain from years of hunching over lab equipment, The early stages of a respiratory infection in one of the engineers. The stress fractures in another scientist's wrist from repetitive motion. He could help them all. With a touch, he could heal their ailments, take away their pain. But Zaranel's warning echoed in his mind. The gift had to be kept secret, at least until he understood more about the dangers it represented. Marcus quietly slipped away from the group, making his way back through the ship's corridors toward the surface. He had a lot to think about, and even more to learn. But as he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn towards something far more important than mining operations and college tuition. Behind him, in the crystal chamber, sensors detected the faintest traces of energy signatures that didn't match anything in the known scientific databases. But the scientists were too excited about their discovery to pay attention to such minor anomalies. In the depths of space, ancient monitoring stations that had been silent for 10,000 years suddenly sparked to life. The Korthak Empire had never stopped watching for signs of Etherian healing technology. And now, for the first time in millennia, they had detected the distinctive energy signature of an active healer. The hunt was about to begin. 3 weeks after the discovery, Marcus Chen sat in his small apartment on Earth, staring at his hands in the dim light of early morning. The glow was barely visible now, just a faint shimmer under his skin that most people would dismiss as a trick of the light. But Marcus knew better. The power Zaranel had given him was growing stronger every day. He'd returned from Kepler 442c with the rest of the survey team, filing his reports and collecting his pay like nothing had changed. The company was thrilled with the discovery, already planning a full-scale archaeological expedition to study the alien ship. Dr. Kim had published preliminary papers that were causing excitement throughout the scientific community. Everyone agreed it was the most significant xenoarchaeological find in human history. None of them suspected that the most important discovery was sitting in a cramped apartment in downtown Chicago, learning to heal paper cuts and houseplant diseases. Marcus flexed his fingers, watching the energy flow beneath his skin. In the past 3 weeks, he'd accidentally healed a dozen small injuries without meaning to. A handshake with his neighbor had cured the man's arthritis. Patting his sister's cat had eliminated a respiratory infection. Every time he touched a living thing, he could feel its life force, see the patterns of health and disease that flowed through it. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. His daughter Sarah had noticed that he seemed different since returning from the mining expedition, but she attributed it to excitement about the discovery. His ex-wife Linda thought he was having some kind of midlife crisis. Neither of them could guess the truth. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from Dr. Kim. Marcus hesitated before answering. She'd been calling regularly, asking follow-up questions about the chamber where he'd found the crystal structure. So far, he'd managed to deflect her inquiries, but she was getting more persistent. "Hello, Dr. Kim," Marcus answered, trying to sound casual. "Marcus, thank you for taking my call. I hope you don't mind, but I've been reviewing the energy readings from the day you discovered the crystal chamber. There are some anomalies in the data that I can't explain." Marcus's blood ran cold. "What kind of anomalies?" "Well, the power surge that activated the ship's systems happened exactly when you entered the chamber. But the energy signature isn't consistent with any known technology. It's almost organic in nature, like it was responding to a biological trigger." "That's interesting," Marcus said carefully. "What do you think it means?" "I'm not sure yet, but I've been wondering if you might have missed something in your initial survey." "Would you be willing to return to the site? The company has approved a second expedition, and they specifically requested that you join the team as a technical consultant." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the healing energy pulse through his veins. Returning to the ship meant risking discovery, but it also meant a chance to see Zaranel again. He needed answers about what was happening to him, and she was the only one who could provide them. "When do we leave?" "Next month. I'll send you the details." And Marcus? Thank you. I know this discovery means as much to you as it does to the scientific community. After ending the call, Marcus walked to his bathroom mirror and studied his reflection. He looked the same as always, just an ordinary middle-aged man with graying hair and tired eyes. But when he concentrated, he could see the network of energy that flowed through his body, the same patterns he'd learned to recognize in other living beings. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus opened it to find Mrs. Patterson from across the hall, clutching her small dog to her chest. The elderly woman looked distraught. "Marcus, I'm sorry to bother you, but Max isn't doing well. The vet says he has cancer, and the treatment would cost more than I can afford. I know it's silly, but you've always been so good with animals, and I thought maybe—" Marcus looked at the small terrier in her arms. Through his enhanced perception, he could see the dark patches where the cancer had taken hold, the disrupted energy patterns that were slowly killing the little dog. Without the healing gift, Max would be dead within weeks. "Let me take a look at him," Marcus said, gently taking the dog from Mrs. Patterson's arms. The moment his skin made contact with the animal's fur, Marcus felt the familiar flow of healing energy. He concentrated on the dark patches, visualizing the corrupted cells being restored to health. The energy flowed from his hands into the dog, seeking out every trace of the disease and burning it away. Max whimpered once, then relaxed in Marcus's arms. When Marcus handed him back to Mrs. Patterson, the dog was alert and energetic, his tail wagging furiously. "Oh, my goodness," Mrs. Patterson breathed. "He looks so much better. What did you do?" "Just gave him some attention," Marcus said. "Sometimes that's all they need." Mrs. Patterson thanked him profusely before returning to her apartment. Marcus closed his door and leaned against it, his heart pounding. The healing had been effortless, as natural as breathing. But it had also drained him more than before. The power was growing stronger, but it was also demanding more from him. Over the following weeks, Marcus found himself drawn to the local hospital. He would sit in the waiting areas, watching the patterns of disease and injury that flowed through the patients. Every instinct he had screamed at him to help, to reach out and heal the suffering he could see all around him. But Zaranel's warnings echoed in his mind. The gift had to remain secret. Still, he found ways to help in small doses. A gentle touch to calm a frightened child, a handshake that eased an old man's chronic pain, brief contacts that provided healing without drawing attention. Each time, he felt the satisfaction of making someone's life a little bit better. But he also began to notice other things. Sometimes, when he was walking through crowded areas, he would sense something different. Not the warm, golden energy of human life, but something darker, colder. It felt predatory, like a hunter stalking through a herd of prey. The feeling grew stronger as his departure date approached. 3 days before he was scheduled to return to Kepler 4422c, Marcus was walking home from the hospital when he felt the sensation again, stronger than ever. He turned around, scanning the crowd behind him. There, standing by a bus stop, was a man in an expensive suit. He looked ordinary enough, but when Marcus focused on him with his enhanced perception, he saw something that made his blood freeze. The man wasn't human. His energy signature was all wrong, cold and mechanical where it should have been warm and organic. The man's head turned, and for a moment his eyes met Marcus's across the busy street. Marcus saw intelligence there, and recognition. The man smiled, revealing teeth that were just a little too sharp, and began walking toward him. Marcus turned and ran. He ducked through alleys and side streets, using every trick he'd learned during his years working in dangerous mining sites. But no matter how many turns he took, he could still sense the predator following him. It wasn't moving fast, wasn't even trying to catch up. It was just following, like it had all the time in the world. Marcus finally reached his apartment building and rushed inside, locking the door behind him. He went to his window and looked down at the street. The man in the suit was standing on the opposite sidewalk, looking up at his building. As Marcus watched, the man pulled out a small device and spoke into it briefly. Then he walked away, disappearing into the evening crowd. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat by his window with the lights off, watching the street for any sign of the predator's return. By morning, he'd made a decision. He couldn't wait for the scheduled expedition. He needed to get back to the ship immediately to warn Zaranel that they'd been discovered. Marcus called Dr. Kim and convinced her to let him return early to prepare the site for the team's arrival. Within 48 hours, he was on a transport ship heading back to Kepler 442c, trying to ignore the feeling that he was being watched. The mining camp on the frozen moon had expanded significantly since his last visit. What had been a temporary operation was now a full research station, complete with laboratories and living quarters for the archaeological team. Marcus checked in with the site supervisor and immediately requested permission to continue his mapping work in the ship's deeper sections. As he descended into the ancient vessel's depths, Marcus felt the familiar hum of alien technology around him. But there was something different now. The patterns in the walls seemed brighter, more active. The ship itself seemed to be responding to his presence in ways it hadn't before. He made his way to the crystal chamber, moving carefully through corridors that now blazed with emergency lighting. When he reached the vast space where he'd first encountered Zaranel, he found it much as he'd left it. The crystal structure stood in the center of the room, apparently dormant. "Zaranel!" Marcus called out. "I know you can hear me. I need to talk to you." The crystal began to glow, and hairline cracks appeared across its surface. In moments, Zaranel stood before him again, her alien features twisted with concern. "You returned sooner than expected," she said, her mental voice urgent. "And you bring danger with you. I can sense predators nearby, hunters from the ancient enemy." "The Korthak Empire? They have found us. I should have expected this. The healing energy signature is unique, impossible to hide once it reaches full strength. They've been monitoring for it across the galaxy for 10,000 years. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's cold corridors. "How many are there?" "I sense 3 ships in your system hiding in the outer asteroid belt. They won't move openly yet. The Korthak prefer subtlety when they're hunting. They'll try to capture you alive, learn how you gain the healing abilities before they eliminate any witnesses." "Then we need to leave. Can this ship fly?" Zaranel shook her head. "The sanctuary has been dormant too long. It would take days to bring all systems online, and we don't have that much time. But there is another way." She gestured toward the walls of the chamber, where the shifting patterns had begun to glow more brightly. "This ship was designed to be more than a hospital. It was also a teacher, a place where the healing arts could be passed to new generations. You want to train me? Now? The basic healing abilities I gave you before were just the beginning. There are defensive techniques, ways to use the life energy as a weapon against those who would abuse it. But the training is dangerous, and there's no guarantee you'll survive it." Marcus thought about the predator who had stalked him through Chicago's streets, about the 3 ships lurking in the outer system. He thought about all the people on Earth who would suffer if the Korthak got their hands on healing technology and perverted it for their own ends. "What do I need to do?" Zaranel led him to one of the chamber's walls, where a complex pattern had begun to pulse with rhythmic light. "Place your hands here and open your mind completely, but be warned, this will push your human physiology to its limits. Your species was not designed to channel this much life energy." Marcus pressed his palms against the glowing symbols. Immediately, power began flowing through him, far more intense than anything he'd experienced before. He felt his consciousness expanding, connecting to the vast network of life energy that permeated the galaxy. He could sense every living thing on the moon, from the microorganisms in the ice to the human researchers in the camp above. But he could also sense the Korthak hunters as they moved closer to the planet's surface. Their ships had broken orbit and were descending through the atmosphere, no longer bothering to hide their presence. They'd detected the massive energy signature generated by the training sequence. "They're coming," Marcus gasped, struggling to control the power flowing through him. "Then we must accelerate the process," Zaranel replied. "Hold on to your humanity, Marcus Chen. Do not let the power consume you." The energy flow increased, and Marcus screamed as his nervous system was pushed beyond its designed limits. He felt his cellular structure changing, adapting to channel forces that no human had ever been meant to wield. For a moment, he thought he was going to die, torn apart by energies too powerful for his mortal frame. Then suddenly, everything clicked into place. The power that had been fighting against his human limitations found new pathways, new ways to flow that worked in harmony with his biology. Marcus opened his eyes and saw that his skin was now glowing with the same soft light as Zaranel's. "The transformation is complete," Zaranel said, and Marcus could hear pride in her mental voice. "You are no longer simply human. You are something new, a bridge between your species and ours." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The ancient vessel's defensive systems had detected the approaching Korthak ships and were automatically activating countermeasures. "They're here," Marcus said, feeling the presence of the hunters like ice in his veins. "Yes, and now we must see if your training was sufficient to face them." Through the ship's hull, Marcus could sense the Korthak warriors as they landed near the research camp. They moved with mechanical precision, their energy signatures cold and merciless. Unlike the warm, chaotic patterns of human life, the Korthak felt empty, as if they had traded their souls for power long ago. In the research camp above, scientists and miners were about to discover that they were no longer alone on the frozen moon. And somewhere in the galaxy, ancient powers were stirring as the first human healer prepared to face an enemy that had terrorized the stars for millennia. The first explosion came from the research camp above, a distant rumble that shook dust from the ancient ship's ceiling. Marcus felt the life forces of the scientists and miners above them suddenly spike with terror and confusion. Through his enhanced perception, he could sense the Korthak warriors moving through the camp with ruthless efficiency. "They're not killing them," Marcus observed, his new abilities allowing him to monitor the situation in real time. "They're stunning them, taking them prisoner." Zaranel nodded grimly. "The Korthak will use your people as leverage. They know you're down here, but they also know that healers have a weakness for protecting the innocent." She gestured toward a section of the chamber wall that had begun to shift and reshape itself, revealing hidden weapon systems. The sanctuary was built during wartime. It has defenses, but they require a healer to operate them. Marcus approached the revealed controls, feeling the ship's systems respond to his presence. Information flowed directly into his mind, showing him the layout of defensive systems that had been hidden throughout the vessel for 10,000 years. Energy shields, plasma cannons, even more exotic weapons that could disrupt the life force of attacking enemies. "This is incredible," Marcus breathed. "Why didn't your people win the war if they had technology like this?" "Because we refused to become the monsters we were fighting," Zaranel replied sadly. "The Korthak were willing to sacrifice entire star systems to achieve victory. We were not. In the end, that difference in philosophy cost us our civilization." Another explosion echoed through the ship, closer this time. The Korthak had found the main entrance to the vessel and were burning their way through the hull. Marcus could sense their energy signatures growing stronger as they descended toward the chamber. "There are 12 of them," Marcus reported, his enhanced senses tracking the invaders' movement through the ship's corridors. They're splitting into 3 groups, trying to surround us. Korthak hunters always work in groups of 4, Zaranel said. It's their standard tactical formation, 1 leader, 2 soldiers, and a technician to operate their equipment. She moved to another section of the wall where additional controls were emerging. I'll activate the ship's defensive systems. Can you handle the weapons? Marcus placed his hands on the control surfaces, feeling the massive power systems throughout the ship respond to his touch. Energy flowed through conduits that had been dormant for millennia, bringing weapon systems online that had last been used in battles fought before human civilization existed. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus could see the Korthak warriors clearly for the first time. They wore powered armor that enhanced their already formidable physical capabilities, and their weapons crackled with energy that could cut through solid metal like tissue paper. But what struck him most was their faces, visible through their helmets' transparent faceplates. They had once been humanoid, but whatever process had transformed them into the Korthak had left them barely recognizable as living beings. Their skin was gray and metallic, their eyes replaced by glowing sensors that tracked movement with mechanical precision. They moved without the chaotic energy patterns that characterized organic life, their souls seemingly replaced by cold, calculating machinery. They used to be like us, didn't they? Marcus asked, horrified by what he was seeing. Long ago, Zaranel confirmed. The original Korthak species sought power above all else. When they encountered our healing technology, they tried to steal it by replacing their organic components with machines. The process gave them incredible abilities, but cost them their capacity for compassion, for growth, for everything that makes life worth living. The first group of Korthak reached the chamber's entrance, their weapons already charging for an attack. Marcus activated the ship's defensive systems, feeling the ancient technology respond to his will. Energy barriers sprang to life across the entrances, and automated weapon systems emerged from hidden compartments in the walls. "Surrender the healer!" the lead Korthak warrior called out, his voice amplified by speakers in his armor. "You cannot escape this time, Etherian. We have been hunting your kind across the galaxy for 10,000 years. My people chose extinction rather than submit to you," Zaranel replied, her mental voice carrying across the chamber with enough force to make the Korthak weapons flicker. "We will not make that mistake again." The battle began in earnest as the Korthak warriors opened fire on the energy barriers. Their weapons sent ripples of force through the defensive screens, but the ancient Etherian technology held firm. Marcus responded with the ship's weapon systems, sending bolts of plasma energy down the corridors toward the attackers. But the Korthak were experienced fighters. They adapted quickly to the ship's defenses, using their superior mobility to avoid the automated weapons while systematically weakening the energy barriers. Within minutes, the first barrier began to flicker and fail. "I need to get closer," Marcus realized. "The ship's weapons are designed for space combat, not fighting inside corridors." "Too dangerous," Zaranel protested. "You've only just learned to control the healing energy. You're not ready to face Korthak warriors in direct combat." Marcus watched as the first energy barrier collapsed completely, allowing the Korthak warriors to advance further into the ship. Above them, he could sense the human prisoners being loaded into Korthak transport ships. Dr. Kim was among them, along with dozens of other scientists and miners who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. "I have to try," Marcus said. "Those people are my responsibility." Before Zaranel could stop him, Marcus was moving toward the chamber's exit. He could feel the healing energy flowing through his enhanced body, but now it felt different. Instead of the gentle warmth he'd grown accustomed to, it burned with righteous anger at the suffering he sensed around him. Marcus reached the first group of Korthak just as they breached the chamber's outer defenses. The lead warrior turned to face him, raising a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. But instead of firing immediately, the creature paused, studying Marcus with its mechanical sensors. "Impossible," the Korthak leader said, its voice filled with electronic distortion. "You are human, but you carry the energy signature of an Etherian healer. How is this possible?" "Guess your sensors need an upgrade," Marcus replied, channeling the healing energy into his hands. But instead of the gentle glow he was used to, the energy blazed like miniature stars, casting harsh shadows on the corridor walls. The Korthak warrior fired, sending a bolt of plasma energy directly at Marcus's chest. Marcus reacted instinctively, raising his hands to block the attack. The plasma bolt struck the energy field surrounding his hands and was absorbed completely, its destructive force converted into pure healing energy. "The legends were true," the Korthak whispered. "A master healer can turn any energy into life force." Marcus didn't waste time responding. He lunged forward, his enhanced physiology allowing him to move faster than any normal human could manage. His hands made contact with the Korthak's armor, and immediately he could sense the tortured existence within. The creature that had once been a living being was now more machine than organism, its organic components replaced by cold metal and circuitry. But somewhere deep inside, Marcus could sense the remnants of its original soul, trapped and suffering after centuries of mechanical existence. Instead of attacking, Marcus did something the Korthak would never expect. He began to heal. The healing energy flowed from his hands into the warrior's mechanical body, seeking out the organic components that remained. Marcus felt the creature's confusion and pain as the life force began to restore connections that had been severed long ago, awakening emotions and sensations that had been suppressed by mechanical programming. The Korthak warrior screamed, but it wasn't a sound of pain. It was the cry of a soul that was remembering what it meant to be alive. The creature collapsed, its mechanical components shorting out as organic neural pathways were restored. When it finally went still, Marcus could sense that it had died not as a machine, but as a living being finding peace at last. The other Korthak warriors opened fire simultaneously, but Marcus was ready for them. The healing energy surrounded him like armor, absorbing their attacks and converting the destructive force into power he could use. He moved through their formation like a force of nature, touching each warrior and offering them the same gift he'd given their leader. One by one, the ancient machines that had once been living beings found redemption in Marcus's touch. As their mechanical components failed and their organic souls were freed, they whispered thanks in languages that had been dead for millennia. But the battle was far from over. Marcus could sense the other two Korthak teams moving through the ship, and more warriors were descending from the transport ships above. Worse, he was beginning to feel the strain of channeling so much healing energy. His human physiology, even enhanced as it was, had limits. Marcus made his way back to the chamber, where Zaranel was maintaining the ship's defensive systems against the advancing enemies. She looked at him with surprise and something that might have been pride. "You freed them," she said, her mental voice filled with wonder. "I can sense their souls departing, finally at peace. In 10,000 years of war, no Etherian ever thought to try healing our enemies." "Maybe that's why the war lasted so long," Marcus replied, slumping against one of the chamber's pillars. "Sometimes the only way to defeat evil is to transform it back into good." But their moment of victory was short-lived. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship as new contacts appeared on the sensors. More Korthak vessels were entering the system, drawn by the energy signatures of the battle. Marcus could sense hundreds of the mechanical warriors aboard the approaching ships. "We can't fight them all," Marcus said, watching the tactical display as it updated with new threat indicators. "No," Zaranel agreed, "but perhaps we don't have to fight them." She moved to another section of the chamber's controls, where symbols were beginning to glow with increasing intensity. "The sanctuary has one more system, something we hoped never to use." "What kind of system?" A beacon, Zaranel explained. It will send a message across the galaxy, alerting every species that the healing arts have been restored. The Etherean dream of a galaxy united in compassion and healing will finally be possible. Marcus understood immediately. But activating it will also tell the Korthak exactly where to find us. Yes. Every warrior in their empire will come here, determined to capture or destroy us before the message can spread. But if we can hold them off long enough for other species to receive the beacon, the knowledge will be beyond their reach forever. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus could see the approaching Korthak fleet. Massive warships that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia were converging on the small moon, their weapons charging for an attack that would sterilize the surface. He thought of Earth, of his daughter Sarah, of all the people who would benefit from the healing arts if they could just survive the next few hours. "Do it," Marcus said. Zaranel activated the beacon, and immediately the chamber filled with blinding light. Energy pulsed outward from the ancient ship, carrying with it the knowledge and wisdom of the Etherean healers. Across the galaxy, species that had never known such power would soon discover that suffering and death were not inevitable parts of existence. But the beacon's activation also drew the immediate attention of every Korthak warrior in the system. Plasma bombardment began raining down from orbit as the fleet tried to destroy the ship before the message could spread further. The sanctuary's shields held against the initial barrage, but Marcus could sense them weakening under the sustained assault. "The humans in the transport ships," Marcus said urgently. "They'll be killed in the crossfire." "The Korthak will use them as hostages," Zaranel replied. "They know you won't risk innocent lives to escape." Marcus closed his eyes, extending his enhanced senses throughout the system. He could feel the terror of the human prisoners, trapped aboard alien ships while a battle raged around them. He could sense the cold satisfaction of the Korthak commanders as they prepared to use human lives as leverage. But he could also sense something else. Other ships were entering the system, vessels with energy signatures unlike anything he'd encountered before. The beacon's message was already being received, and civilizations across the galaxy were responding. "We're not alone," Marcus said, opening his eyes to see alien ships materializing around the Korthak fleet. "They're coming to help us." The battle for Kepler 442c had become something larger than either side had expected. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy's civilizations were uniting against the Korthak Empire. And at the center of it all stood a human miner who had become something more, ready to defend not just his own species, but the hope of healing that could transform the entire galaxy. As the ancient ship's weapons powered up for a final battle, Marcus Chen prepared to discover just how far humanity was willing to go to protect the innocent and heal the wounded. The stars themselves would bear witness to what happened next.